I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment, and I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm simply here to apologize. So what we came across that day in the woods was obviously unplanned, and the reactions you saw on tape were raw, they were unfiltered. None of us knew how to react or how to feel.
All right, well, today we're going to go over a few apology videos. And those are the videos that someone does when they're an internet star and they've made a mistake by saying something they shouldn't have or doing something they shouldn't have, and they come on and apologize for it. So Greg's collected a bunch of those, and we're going to take a look at a few of them. I think our first one's going to be Logan Paul. We good?
Yeah,
let's go.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment, and I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm simply here to apologize. So what we came across that day in the woods was obviously unplanned, and the reactions you saw on tape were raw, they were unfiltered. None of us knew how to react or how to feel. I should have never posted the video. I should have put the cameras down and stopped recording what we were going through. There's a lot of things I should have done differently, but I didn't. And for that, from the bottom of my heart, I am sorry. I want to apologize to the internet. I want to apologize to anyone who's seen the video. I want to apologize to anyone who has been affected or touched by mental illness or depression or suicide. But most importantly, I want to apologize to the victim and his family. For my fans who are defending my actions, please don't. They do not deserve to be defended. The goal with my content is always to entertain, to push the boundaries, to be all-inclusive. In the world I live in, I share almost everything I do. The intent is never to be heartless, cruel, or malicious. Like I said, I've made a huge mistake. I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm just here to apologize. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm disappointed in myself. And I promise to be better. I will be better. Thank you.
All right. So, Greg, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm going to take it down a little different path than you might think, not just body language, because you only apologize when a handful of things occur. And there's some social emotions that we're tied up in. Those primarily around guilt or shame are the reasons you need to apologize. People will say embarrassment, but embarrassment is the moment you realize that you've done something to cause guilt or shame. And those two things have very different causes. One, guilt is an internal thing. I've violated something in myself, and shame is you've broken the contract with society. Those are two very different reasons. How you deal with that, whether you internalize or externalize it, is based on how your brain is wired. Some people immediately go and lunge back at the person, and that's their way of externalizing the problem. Others internalize it, and it turns into a way they have to rationalize and come up with a reason or an excuse. And there's a lot of opportunity in either case to deny and to lash out. So we're going to see very different approaches in each of these people. And in this guy, I'm going to hit just a few things. I'm going to say, I can see that he is, whether he had a coach or he rehearsed and practiced what he needed to say, he clearly is accessing that auditory memory. You can see it when he hits things like, I always intend to entertain, I'm not worthy. And the interesting one for me is when he says something about not being worthy of whatever. You see that mouth grooming and that him licking his lips. He also purses his lips at talking about the victim and does that tongue jut. This is a very uncomfortable thing for him. And I'm going to stop right there and say, if I were looking for a genuine apology, if his apology is genuine, and I believe it's based on his feelings of guilt and remorse for whether he believes that he did something wrong or he just jacked up his career, is a different story. But I see a genuine feeling of guilt here from my angle, and you guys may disagree. Chase, what do you got?
I see an absence of emotion. There's not much emotion here at all. And I think there's some regret, and there's some regret that damaged his career as a YouTuber. He says the words "the victim" to describe the person that they had found, and we see immediate lip compression after that. I thought that was interesting. It was a good data point. I don't think it's going to give us a whole bunch of data to something to look for, but it's interesting that that was there. It shouldn't be there for someone who feels genuine remorse. The genuine remorse, when they said the victim, you see movement here or downward eye movement towards the emotional part of the eye sphere. I'll just made that up. When he says, please don't defend my actions, there's a quick eyebrow flash right there, which is saying, I think that he's showing innocence there towards his followers who are defending his actions and asking them to keep defending his actions. So that's that little display of innocence. There, I'll skip a few of these. I'm disappointed, I'm ashamed of myself, both followed by lip puckering, sour taste. I think this is a disagreement with this statement. This is the sour taste. He feels like he has to say these things in order to regain some of his followership. And the best one there, the clearest one there is, I promise to be better. And this is followed by a very strong jaw-clenching behavior. And you guys can talk about the meaning of that if you want to expound on it. But I would say this is indicative of restraint and anger here. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Let me talk a little bit about that lip pursing for a second, because I think what's happening there, it's stress, but what he's getting ready to do, he's doing that because he's like, okay, I got this other stuff out of the way. Here we go. That's when he starts unloading the part about the victim and the part about, the don't feel sorry. We're right in the middle when all that really starts. So another thing, and I agree with you on this, we see no expression whatsoever, no expression change. We see a little bit of movement in the eyebrows, but not much at all. His voice in his baseline is usually, his voice volume is much higher than that. It's much more lively, and because he's an entertainer and he's trying to be exciting. It's low, almost creepily low in this case. And he uses different words. His vernacular is completely different than what he usually uses when he's out talking about anything else, because he's goofing off and doing that. But this is completely uncharacteristic of his the behavior we've seen so far with him. And I think what we're seeing, and this indicates to me, is narcissistic behavior. Because what he's doing is he's putting himself, when he talks about, in my world, it's like, there's your world, but in my world, I share everything. So that's what we're seeing in this point. He's separating himself from everyone as he goes through that. And then we see when it comes to his eyes, his blink rate is not really very fast. It's fairly slow. And going back to what Chase always goes to is the shutter speed. His eyes close, and they're not quick to open up really fast. They open and close really quickly. I'm going to put that in the eye blocking category, because I don't believe he wants to do this, or he doesn't like doing this as he's going along. And then when he presses his lips together, again, that's him getting ready to deliver the message, the reason he's here, because all this is a build up to that. Everything else is a build up to that. And as far as loping goes, it's not very smooth. I got $500 that says this is like his 5th or 6th time of giving this a shot, because he's trying to do it all in one shot. He looks ready to do it. He looks like he's rehearsed this, and he's remembering things he said before and how it went. That's the way it looks to me. Then when it comes to his eyes, to the eye blinking, once he starts into the part about the victim and who he actually feels sorry for and all that, there's a 14-second gap between blinks there. He doesn't blink for 14 seconds. He's looking right down the barrel. We don't see any illustrators. He's not moving his hands, not even moving his head very much. That to me is what indicates that it's not sincere. He really does feel bad about doing that, but it's nothing. He's not going, look, I'm sorry. Your hands open up, they open, they'll move around as you're trying to communicate as much as you possibly can your point to a person or to the internet, as he says, because he's apologizing to the internet. Yeah, I'm just going to stop there. There's so much to do, but I think this is rehearsed, and I would bet that this is 5 or 6 shots into it before you get started. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so to pick up on Greg's point here, if the society around you has been disdainful of you, contemptful of you, they've basically said, you've done something socially wrong, you're out. As we say in England, you're being sent to Coventry. I don't know why. Coventry's not that bad. But anyway, that's what we say. You're being sent to Coventry. Hello to everybody from Coventry. So what you have to show, and it's the same across the planet, doesn't matter what social group, society, country you belong to, when you are shown disdain, you must show shame and remorse. And it's a big signal. What you do is you show sorrow and you do eye blocking. You look down, okay? And you dare not look anybody else in the eye because you don't deserve their status. And that, if you show enough shame, they let you back in because everybody needs each other, okay? So I don't see that prolonged shame. I don't even see any indicators of shame in this. Here's what I do see. I see a lot of lip grooming throughout, which is that lipping stuff. I think it's not so much pushing out bad things. I think it's trying to say, hey, I still look good, okay? And that's especially around the idea of heartless, cruel, heartless and cruel. He doesn't want to be seen as heartless and cruel. It's important that his fans, his society see him as not heartless, cruel, and malicious was another word that he does around that biggest piece of lip grooming. He says, I'm simply here to apologize. And there, as Chase pointed out, there is this sour, bitter taste that you see there. I concur with Chase. I don't think he likes this idea of having to apologize. I don't think the bitterness is around what got him there. I think the bitterness is around that he's there and having to do this right now. I'm sorry, he says. I think at that point, we see him go into freeze, the freeze part of fear. Now we might go, well, is he accessing, because he's just talked about the images that he saw and recorded, which were some pretty awful images that he recorded and broadcast and kind of made fun of. We might go, well, is he accessing those images, which would be pretty fearful images to most people, a pretty strong image of death? I think probably not. I think probably the fear is around him losing his status and his audience right now. Disappointed in myself. And again, sour, bitter taste. But again, we see no shame around this. So on a scale of great, sincere apologies that show shame, I don't think we're seeing one here. I think we see other things that all of us have described. Greg?
The one thing I think we have to remember, and I tried to look for eye breaking because shame and guilt should both have those. Mm-hmm. These guys do this all the time. Every one of these guys you're going to look at are camera focused. So it does make it a little awkward, but I agree with you. I don't see the normal try to break eye contact and do that. I actually looked at Ekman, and Ekman says the one thing that indicates shame is lack of facial expression and breaking eye contact.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I agree, Greg, and I'm going to push on that, which is I would say shame and grief and guilt is not something we experience every day, especially shame at a high level, I would say. And therefore, most likely, you're not ready for it. When it comes, you're not prepared for it. And even though you might be an entertainer that deals with this every day, you know, and is on camera every day and is managing their emotions every day, shame is not one that you'll have managed on a daily basis. So I would say if shame is really there, you're not going to be able to countermeasure it. It'll come out. And that's looking at other apologies that I've seen where people have shown shame and they are entertainers and it's super clear. They can't countermeasure it. They can't control it.
So let's throw it around and see what our percentage of sincerity is on this, right? Because I gave him a 4 on being sincere. Greg, what do you give him?
4%.
4 out of 10.
A 4 out of 10. I 1 to 10. I give him 4 out of 10.
Yeah, so I think he's showing guilt, but guilt about himself. I don't think he's showing a sincere apology. I think he's apologizing because he has to, and the guilt is showing. So I'll give him a 3 or 4. Let's make it 4. I'll agree with you.
Okay, Chase, what do you got?
I think it's more regret than anything else, but I'd give him a 3.764 out of 10 for honesty of the apology.
Excellent. Mark?
Yeah, if it's shame that we're looking for, and from my point of view, I'd say it is. I'm giving him like a 2 or a 3 on that. I'm not seeing enough shame to, if any, really, to make it a sincere social apology.
Cool. Okay.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment, and I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm simply here to apologize. So what we came across that day in the woods was obviously unplanned, and the reactions you saw on tape were raw, they were unfiltered. None of us knew how to react or how to feel. I should have never posted the video. I should have put the cameras down and stopped recording what we were going through. There's a lot of things I should have done differently, but I didn't. And for that, from the bottom of my heart, I am sorry. I want to apologize to the internet. I want to apologize to anyone who's seen the video. I want to apologize to anyone who has been affected or touched by mental illness or depression or suicide. But most importantly, I want to apologize to the victim and his family. For my fans who are defending my actions, please don't. They do not deserve to be defended. The goal with my content is always to entertain, to push the boundaries, to be all-inclusive. In the world I live in, I share almost everything I do. The intent is never to be heartless, cruel, or malicious. Like I said, I've made a huge mistake. I don't expect to be forgiven. I'm just here to apologize. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm disappointed in myself. And I promise to be better. I will be better. Thank you.
I'm Scott Rouse. I'm a body language expert and analyst, and I train law enforcement and the military in interrogation and body language. And I created Body Language Tactics with Greg Hartley. Mark?
I'm Mark Bowden. I'm an expert in human behavior and body language. I help people all over the world to stand out, win trust, and gain credibility every time they communicate, including some of the leaders of the G7. Chase.
I'm Chase Hughes. I'm a best-selling author of a book on behavioral profiling, body language, persuasion, and influence. I train those things to government agencies and the general public. I'm also in Florida. I apologize. My background is different. Greg.
I'm Greg Hartley. I'm a former Army interrogator, interrogation instructor, resistance to interrogation instructor. I've written 10 books on body language and behavior and put this course, Body Language Tactics, at bodylanguagetactics.com together with Scott. And I spend most of my time on Wall Street and in corporate America.